Even though I have to say that every tournament is so different. You come from Monaco to Madrid, which is very different, and from Madrid to Rome is...
I am very amazed that he is this good. That was John McEnroe, live on ESPN, completely unraveling. The man who terrorized umpires for 4 decades, the man tennis remembers for rage, sat in that broadcast chair and lost it watching Sinner from a distance. That was August. Rome changed everything. Sinner walked onto clay in all black on Thursday, took 92 minutes, and just broke the record Djokovic built in 2011, the greatest single season any man has ever played on the ATP Tour. 31 consecutive Masters, 1,000 wins, 15 years, untouched. Nobody, not Federer, not Nadal, not a single player on this planet, came within 10 wins of it. Nobody thought it was possible to touch it. Sinner didn't just touch it. He walked straight through it at 32, with a bad leg, on home clay, in front of 32,000 screaming Italians.
Losing that match to Carlos, what he did in the aftermath and his ability to speak.
Tonight, he faces Medvedev in the Rome semifinal. First ever meeting on clay. Medvedev hasn't won a set off him in nearly 2 years. Subscribe now because the streak is still running and Roland Garros is 9 days away. But the moment McEnroe lost it on camera tells you something deeper about what Sinner has actually broken, and how far back this really goes. McEnroe's relationship with amazement is worth understanding before anything else. This is a man who played in an era when tennis was considered a gentleman's sport and spent the better part of a decade making it look like a war. He won 7 Grand Slam singles titles. He beat Bjorn Borg. He was the best player in the world for stretches in the early 1980s. And through all of that, through every match and every broadcast and every commentary role across 3 decades, he kept his composure for the sport itself. He never gushed, he analyzed, he critiqued. He set a standard for what elite tennis should look like based on everything he had personally achieved. So when McEnroe sat in the ESPN booth at the 2025 US Open and said, "I am very amazed that he is this good," that sentence carried weight that a casual viewer might have missed. He wasn't just complimenting a player. He was admitting that something was happening on a tennis court that exceeded his entire frame of reference. And what made it even more significant was the context. At that point in August 2025, Sinner had already served a 3-month WADA suspension. He had missed Indian Wells, Miami, Monte Carlo, and Madrid in the spring. Roughly 4,500 potential ranking points gone. He had come back at the Italian Open in May and lost the final to Alcaraz. He had then reached the French Open final, held 3 championship points against the same opponent in the 4th set of a match that ran for 5 hours and 29 minutes, the longest Roland Garros final in history, and still lost. Then he dusted himself off, went to Wimbledon, and beat Alcaraz cleanly in 4 sets to win his first title on grass. That was the Sinner that McEnroe was watching in August, a man who had been suspended, humiliated in Paris despite being within 2 points of the title, and then immediately turned around and won Wimbledon. McEnroe said he was very amazed. He should have been. But even then, even in that moment at the US Open, nobody knew what was actually coming, because the streak hadn't started yet. The official starting point is November 2025, Paris Masters 2nd round. Sinner beat Zizou Berg's 6-4, 6-2. Nothing spectacular about the scoreline, nothing that announced what the next 6 months would become. He won that tournament. He defended his ATP Finals title in Turin without dropping a single set. And then he left 2025 behind with a 58-6 season record, 6 titles, and a statistical footnote that TNT Sports surfaced in late November, which quietly changed the conversation around what this player actually was. Sinner had won 56.45% of every point he played in 2025. That was the best points won percentage in ATP history. It beat Nadal's 2012 season. It beat Djokovic's 2011. The only other players who had ever cracked 56% were those 2 men, and both of them were operating at the absolute zenith of their careers when they did it. Sinner matched them while serving a 3-month ban in the middle of the year. When 2026 started, Sinner went to the Australian Open. He reached the semifinals and lost to Djokovic, then lost again in Doha to Jakub Mensik in the quarterfinals. 2 defeats in January and February, and then something switched. In March, he arrived at Indian Wells. He won the title without dropping a set across the entire tournament. Then he crossed to Miami and did exactly the same thing, another title, no sets dropped. He became the first player since Roger Federer in 2017 to win the Sunshine Double, and the first player in ATP history to complete it without dropping a set. After those two events, the streak was at 13 matches and already one of the most impressive runs the season had produced. Nobody was talking about Djokovic's record yet. It was still 12 wins away. Monte Carlo came next. For the first time in his career, Sinner faced Alcaraz at a Masters 1000 clay event final. He won it in straight sets. That victory gave him 4 consecutive Masters 1000 titles and returned him to the world #1 ranking. The sport was beginning to notice. Madrid followed in early May, where Sinner crushed Alexander Zverev 6-1, 6-2 in the final in under an hour. Zverev, standing at the trophy ceremony, said it plainly. "I think there's a big gap between Sinner and everybody else right now. He was the world #3 and he had just been dismantled in 59 minutes. By the time Sinner lifted that Madrid trophy, he had become the first player in ATP history to win 5 consecutive Masters 1000 titles. The streak now stood at 28 matches. Djokovic's record was 3 wins away. That record deserves its own explanation, because calling it untouched for 15 years doesn't fully capture what Djokovic actually did in 2011. He finished that season 70-6. He won 3 Grand Slams, beating Nadal in 6 finals throughout the year, including twice on clay, a surface where Nadal had previously beaten him all 9 times they had met. He went 41-0 to start the year before Federer stopped him at the French Open semifinals. He rose to world #1 for the first time. After the US Open that year, McEnroe made a statement about Djokovic that became one of the most cited assessments in the modern era. He said Djokovic was having the greatest year in the history of the sport. Nadal, who lost to Djokovic in 6 finals that season and went 0-6 against him across the entire year, later said it was probably the highest level of tennis he had ever seen from another player. The Masters 1000 streak that came out of that season ran from the second round at Indian Wells in March all the way to the Cincinnati final in August, where Djokovic retired with a shoulder injury while trailing Andy Murray. 31 consecutive wins across 5 different tournaments on 3 different surfaces. Nobody came within 7 wins of it for 15 years. Federer got to 29 once in 2005 to 2006, and that was the closest anyone managed. The record sat there protected by the sheer weight of what Djokovic had built around it. Then Rome this week. Sinner arrived in Rome needing 5 wins to complete the career Golden Masters, winning all 9 Masters 1000 events, and to become the first Italian man to win the Rome title since Adriano Panatta in 1976. His first 3 matches were controlled. He dropped no sets. The crowd at Campo Centrale, already treating him like a conquering hero, grew louder with each round. By the time he reached the quarterfinal against Andrei Rublev on Thursday, the record was 2 wins away. Rublev's coach for this tournament was Marat Safin, a former world #1, a man who won the Australian Open and the US Open during his career, someone who understood elite tennis from the inside. During the match, Safin watched from the box as the Russian lost the first set 6-2 in under 20 minutes. He watched Rublev fall 4-1 behind in the second set. At that point, something happened with Sinner. Late in that second set, he showed a physical issue. His leg, specifically. He was struggling to generate the same force on his ground strokes. Rublev saw it. He managed to break back and make it 4-2. Safin delivered an expletive-laden instruction from the player's box. The crowd sensed something might shift. Sinner held his next service game and then broke Rublev to close the match 6-4. It took 90 minutes in total. The 32nd consecutive Masters 1000 win. Djokovic's record, gone. Sinner said afterwards, "I don't play for records, I play just for my own story. At the same time, it means a lot to me, but tomorrow is another opponent." Then he walked to the locker room. No celebration, no theater, just the same expression he carries into every post-match interview, the one that makes commentators lose their minds because it refuses to match the scale of what he has just done. This is precisely the detail that McEnroe has been wrestling with for months. At the French Open this year, speaking on TNT Sports about that 2025 Roland Garros final, he said watching Sinner in those championship point moments made him proud to be a former player. He described it as one of the matches where you feel the sport is doing something unbelievable that makes people who aren't necessarily tennis fans take a look and go, wow. And that match was a defeat for Sinner. McEnroe was moved by a Sinner loss. The reaction to a Sinner win tends to go further, which is why the broadcast moments after the Wimbledon 2025 final, when Sinner dethroned Alcaraz on center court, produced the quote that McEnroe said had to be one of his best matches, particularly after what he went through at the French Open, to be able to pull that off as comfortably as he did. What comes next is still unfolding. Tonight's semifinal against Medvedev is the 33rd match in the streak. Medvedev won this Rome title in 2023. He is 1-9 against Sinner in their last 10 meetings and has not won a set off him in nearly 2 years. This is the first time they have met on clay in any professional match. Medvedev has less rest coming into this semifinal, having played a 3-set battle against Martin Landelus on Thursday evening, while Sinner had finished his own match many hours earlier. The odds at Kalshi sitting at 92 cents in Sinner's favor before the match, making him a minus 1,150 favorite. The market is not being dramatic. It is reflecting the evidence. But the leg issue from Thursday has not gone away. Tim Henman noted signs of fatigue in the Rublev match. Medvedev, in his pre-match press conference, acknowledged that physical attrition might be his best asset, saying he would try to be aggressive but understood the task. A win tonight means a Rome final on Sunday. A Rome final means the career Golden Masters is one match away, and Roland Garros begins on May 24th, 9 days from now, where Sinner arrives as top seed with Alcaraz absent due to a wrist injury. Djokovic once told McEnroe during the height of his 2011 dominance that he felt like nothing could stop him. Sinner doesn't say things like that. He says he plays for his own story. He says tomorrow is another opponent. He says the highest priority is to recover physically. And then he goes out and does something the sport has never seen before. McEnroe has been watching professional tennis for 50 years. He knows what greatness looks like because he produced it himself. When he sits in a broadcast chair and loses his composure over a single player, not because of a tantrum, not because of a controversy, but because the tennis itself exceeds every reference point he has ever built. That is not a small thing. That is a man who understands the sport at the deepest level, telling you in the only language left to him that what he is watching has no precedent. The record nobody thought was possible now belongs to Jannik Sinner. It has for less than 48 hours, and depending on what happens tonight in Rome and then in Paris in 9 days, this might end up being the least remarkable thing he does this month. If this video gave you a different way of seeing what Sinner is actually building right now, not just the wins, but the weight of what each one means, then subscribe. Every major chapter of this story is coming fast. The semifinal tonight, the final on Sunday, Roland Garros in 9 days. This channel will be here for all of it, with the context that actually makes the numbers mean something.